believed in Sunday schools and the other one didn't. One had missionary societies and this one didn't. So when you deal with this whole restorationist movement, which split into myriads of sects, you have such a plethora of doctrinal positions. One gets lost in the maze. In one Church of Christ publication, they gave a list of 110 issues that have split the movement down through the years, be it from pitch pipes to choirs. Now remember, if you've got to have book, chapter, and verse for everything, you're going to have problems. I'm surprised someone hadn't talked about pews. No pews were listed in the Bible. Neither was air conditioning, you say. We can add those to the list. Tenthly, some Campbellite theologians have now moved further in the direction of process theology. They teach that God is not omniscient. He does not know the future, particularly the Gospel Plan of Salvation by W.T. Brents, published by the Gospel Advocate Company in Nashville, Tennessee. Just some significant dates for you to jot down. In 1809, Thomas Campbell, the father, was censored by the Presbyterian Church for false teaching. They were originally Presbyterians. In that same year, he wrote, quote, "Declaration and Address," end quote, for the, quote, "the Christian Association of Washington." That statement of faith served as their creed for many, many years. When someone tells me, no creed but Christ, it means they have a creed, but they don't want to put it on the table because it means it's open to debate. 1809, the son Alexander Campbell arrives in the United States as another immigrant from Scotland and joins his father. 1811, the association becomes an independent church after being rejected by the Presbyterians once again. 1812, the Campbells give up on Presbyterianism, and this is very important, and went over to the Baptists, where they were baptized by immersion by a Baptist clergyman. This was in 1812, and they were baptized at Buffalo Creek. This isn't far from Uniontown, Pennsylvania. This was 15 years before they accepted the doctrine that you must be baptized in a certain way according to a certain theology for remission of salvation. 1813, the Campbells joined the Redstone Baptist Association. 1820, Alexander Campbell is so committed to the Baptist cause that he publicly defends the Baptist Church in debates against Presbyterians. For example, he did a debate with John Walker, a Presbyterian, and these records are still extant. 1823, in August, the Redstone Baptist Association prepares to censor the Campbells for teaching false doctrine. They resign and set up their own independent Baptist church. In October of that year, Campbell once again represents the Baptists in a debate against the Presbyterians. He calls himself, quote, a Reformed Baptist, end quote. And the whole group referred to themselves as Reformed, meaning reorganized Baptists, end quote. In 1827, Walter Scott discovers the lost gospel, that baptism is essential for salvation, that in order to obtain forgiveness of sins, you must be baptized by immersion, and it must be specifically stated and understood that's why you're being baptized. In 1813, Campbell's group they were now calling themselves the Disciples of Christ. They united with Scott's group, who called themselves simply the Christians. Isn't that humble? We are the Christian church. In 1849, controversy over missionary society splits the Restoration movement, and the fragmentation begins. 1860s, when they begin to argue over musical instruments, a piano and organ, down to whether or not you could have a harmonica. 1906, the Churches of Christ list themselves as a separate denomination apart from the Disciples of Christ and the Christian church. All of these movements, each claiming that they are the original heirs of the Campbells. 1920s, when I studied the historical documents at various Church of Christ seminaries, such as in Cincinnati and colleges, that's when the multitude of splits began in great earnest. And they began to fight over everything. You see, once you take that idea, you can't have anything in the church, but you have a tag and you can write a verse on it. You have opened yourself up to absurdum. How far will you go with that kind of theology? Just quickly, in terms of the Campbellite movement being the father or the mother of various cultic groups, in terms of Campbellism and Mormonism, Joseph Smith surrounded himself with the following men who taught him the idea of restoration. So when the Mormon missionaries come to your home and they pull out the flannel graph or they have their colored pictures, what do they tell you? Joseph Smith restored the gospel that had been lost since the first century. You begin to hear exactly what Alexander Campbell taught. And then when they discuss baptism, what do they tell you? Exactly the same doctrine as found in the teachings of the Campbellites. You must be baptized unto remission of sin. As a matter of fact, most of the early leadership of the Mormon church were all ex-preachers in the Church of Christ. Many of them were personal friends of Alexander Campbell. So many Church of Christ people became Mormons, particularly in the West, according to Nathaniel West, probably their best church historian, that Alexander Campbell complained that Mormonism was eating up his people. For example, Sidney Rigdon, Parley Pratt, Oliver Crowdy, Orson Hyde, Layman White, Edward Partridge,